What's up, everybody? Unrested here at the park with my tiny baby. See how tiny? Look, so tiny I can hold it in two fingers. I got a recent email asking me about a topic recently in multiple publications. I think this one was sent via a link of CNN saying, why are there so many virgins in Japan and people refusing to have sex until the later years of anywhere from 35 on? Why are men and women not having as many babies? Why is the population plummeting? Kind of all things I've sort of answered before. But it's been brought up again. I guess the whole world's starting to finally notice Japan's not reproducing. Um, I don't know, man. Uh, the answer that I saw from, I don't know what this woman's position was, and it's said in the article, so it's just me being absent minded, not trying to, um, I guess, not give her credit where credit is due. I think she was either like an ambassador or some sort of college professor who studies Asian studies, I think was all it was. And then she said that her reasoning behind why she thinks a lot of Japanese men are no longer pursuing Japanese women and starting families is because now that women are starting to get more power in the workplace, that men seeing their own salaries drop below a woman's salary makes them feel like less of a man and they can't be a father figure then, and etc. etc. So kind of like their balls have been taken away and their manhood is gone because they see women flourishing in the workplace, which I I don't really see from day to day in Japan. I never really hear this complaint from Japanese men. I don't really hear this be a complaint of the culture in general. I don't really have a lot of my students ever talk to me about this, or it be an issue that they, I guess, take up with. I don't know. I kind of have my own views. I'm not saying that this lady is wrong. Obviously, she must be very well versed in Asian studies if that was like her role as a teacher in a college. I can't discredit that. I'm sure she's done quite a bit of research into this. But it's in my day to day life within Japan, I'm not seeing this being brought up as a problem as to why the population is dropping. Um, there's more to it than that. It's far more complex, which I think is usually always the situation with any big social problem. It's far more complex than a one answer question. Um, and here's kind of the things I want to expand on and tell you my own views of what I see go on daily, the struggles I see parents and people who want to become parents deal with. And that is number one, in general, she said, the one thing this woman said was that Japanese men make a third of what they used to make in comparison to the economy back in the bubble era of Japan. And this is very true. Salaries are too low in Japan right now. There used to be a time during the bubble era where Japanese men made quite a bit of money, to the point that I remember reading about how electronic stores and jewelry stores would constantly sell out of all the stuff they had because men in Japan who worked salaryman jobs had so much money to throw around that they were constantly buying stuff. Of course, that bubble burst. The economy went down. The economy in any country fluctuates in this same manner. There's hills and valleys. This isn't out of the ordinary. It's not some of sort of drastic, I guess, drop in money or some sort of insane inflation. So that's just normal. As far as the salaries, I think what you're dealing with here is you've got a lot of CEOs who are very elderly running these companies who still think that the salaries that they paid back in the 1990s or 1980s is okay for the year 2000 and on, which it's not, obviously, with the inflation of prices. Now the fact that there's 10% tax on a lot of items in Japan, which never used to exist before, means everything in general costs quite a bit more. On top of that, one thing that's always cost way too much in Japan is getting daily care for kids. On top of that, another problem stacked on that one is there's never been enough kindergartens and care centers and daycares and hoikuens and yoichiens for kids in Japan, and it's still a huge problem the government is just not really doing anything about. And again, this is due to the fact that the biggest population within Japan is the elderly. As many of you probably already know who study any bit about Japan, last year and the year before that, elderly diapers sold far more than diapers for babies. And that's because as the elderly population increases, the infant birth rate goes down and down and down and down, and that's why you see sales like that happen. But it's also why you see a lot of other things happen, such as services being taken out of neighborhoods, parks being taken away, for kids to play in, places for kids to enjoy, places to take care of kids, and more things to be focused around the elderly, and including political campaigns as well. A lot of these politicians campaigning for their position talk all about benefits for the elderly while leaving anybody who wants to start a family and birth a small child behind in the dust. And when that happens, when people don't feel like their need is cared for, they try to no longer make that need a part of their life. And that's why kids and families and I guess reproduction in general is becoming less and less of part of a life in Japan. I myself was not interested in having kids or getting married until I knew I would be able to set myself up financially for both. Number one, to get married, and number two, even more importantly, set up financially to have kids. I would not have had kids myself, these two lovely little babies, if I didn't know I was going to be financially sound for them, if I didn't know I was going to be able to afford care for them, everything from insurance, which really isn't too bad in Japan. It really isn't. The prices for child insurance is not so bad. Health insurance for kids, very, very cheap. But schooling is not. Even a colloquial school like my kids go to can cost anywhere from, 600 to 700 a month. And that's not cheap. That's the price of some apartments in Japan. That's the price of a 1 LDK out in Tokyo. And that's probably maybe a little bit more expensive, but definitely the price of one here in Osaka. And it's kind of outrageously high. So you've got that too. There's so much more playing into it than just the fact that now women can get better jobs, so men feel like they've lost their manhood and can no longer provide as equivalent males. I really don't think that's a huge issue. I think the huge issue is the fact that there's so many things the government's not providing, not keeping up with. They'll acknowledge it. They'll be like, yeah, you're right, there isn't enough care. Yeah, you're right, there isn't enough yochiens. Yeah, you're right, there's not enough aftercare, school care, etc., etc., But they don't ever really do anything about it. They just kind of acknowledge, yep, that's a problem. And then once again, like I said, salaries are too low. People can't afford to raise kids if their salaries are too low. And there's still kind of this ethic of work in Japan where they try to believe that only the man should work and the woman should stay at home, which is, I guess, fine for some people. If that's your prerogative, cool. If you want to be a very traditional conservative family and do that, cool. But again, then the government needs to make sure jobs are providing enough money for the man to pay for not only the woman's life, the house that she lives in, but the kid as well. And they're not doing that. They're not making the funds that jobs pay keep up with the stay-at-home mothers and all-day workaholic fathers that are salarymen. The age of the salaryman is past. Yes, there's still some people who work that job, but number one, job security is gone. Number two, having the increase in your pay month by month, year by year in Japan, it's gone. That doesn't happen anymore. Sometimes even bonuses are gone in Japan. That used to be a big part of Japan's traditional business class. Awesome, awesome bonuses every, I guess, around winter time, Christmas, before the fiscal year started again. And that's being taken away by a lot of companies. Pensions are being taken away by a lot of companies. Now people are just left with the government pension, which pays very poor. It's quite awful for how much people need to survive and how much elderly care costs and how much the government actually provides financially. It's totally off balance. So that's just my own kind of input of what I see and what I hear Japanese culture themselves complain about. These are not my own personal opinions. This is what I have had from everything from teaching at Kaiwa with English conversation with students, anywhere between the ages of 18 on up to my oldest student being 60. And they all complain about a lot of the same things and what they see the government doing wrong. I hope you can take that part in as well. Of course, like I said, don't totally disavow anything the woman who was quoted in that article said, but take into the fact that there's a more complex answer to this very difficult JFAQ, Japan's frequently asked questions, with me, Unrested, with the questions you requested. Have a good one.